Hey guys, what's up? I want to let you guys know that this is my 50th episode. Can you believe it? 50 episodes I've been doing this. I'm shocked. I am completely shocked that I made it to 50. I'm more than enthusiastic to share this 50th episode than with Kelly Beamon. She's phenomenal. She has been referenced by the New York Times, ABC News, US Today, and she's currently the senior editor for Metropolis magazine. We were Instagram friends for a while, and I finally got the courage to really, well, I shouldn't say friends. In my mind at the time, we were friends because she was posting some cool stuff and I was just following her. But then she wrote this article back in August called Why Aren't Black Firms Working on Slave Memorials? And I was just like, I need to talk to her about this article. I just give you a brief synopsis of this article. It's online and it's available, so you can just Google why aren't Black firms working on memorials to slavery? ? You can Google all that, or you can just shorten it as you like. And the link is in the show notes. For a brief synopsis of this, it reads, and I'm reading directly from what's online now. A memorial in Virginia is the latest cultural project acknowledging a debt to enslaved African Americans. But the most high-profile commissions and contracts are hardly ever awarded to African American firms. I was hooked. So read the article and then come back to this episode and listen to it. We not only talked about the article, but there's a couple other things. We talked about African American architecture firms. And my main question to her was, why aren't we getting published? Why is it that I'm not seeing African American firms? I've seen African American architects talk about what's going on right now with racial diversity, inclusion, all that jazz, and the awesome work that we are doing to dismantle all that good stuff, social justice, all that stuff. But I need to see more projects that we do. We also talked about journalism too, a conversation about journalists and having a seat at that table as well. I only know maybe, besides her, maybe like 1, 2, 3 other maybe editors and writers of color that talks about design. And I know there's more out there. And these are the ones that I've interacted with in my lifetime. I know we're out there. So yeah, it's a really nice, juicy episode that you're about to listen to. But I need to forewarn you though, because the end just stops. So we were talking and it just stops. And there's nothing I could do. I was thinking about transition, or maybe I come in and interject and say, we wrapped up or something like that. But I decided not to do that. And instead, I'm telling you right now, at the very end, you're like, what happened? Is she just said bye. And I did. I was like, okay, thank you, bye. Like, that was it. Just to warn you about that. Kelly and I actually talked for like 3 hours. But to condense it all, I made it into what it is right now. But we talked for a long time. Let me tell you, if we like get together, because it's just been text and phone and stuff like that we've been talking, but if we were to get together to a bar or something, oh my gosh, we would shut the place down and I would not get any sleep because we would just talk for like forever. But anyways, I hope you enjoy it. Bye. Kelly, how you doing?
I am great, Melissa.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. I thought you'd never ask. No, I enjoy what you do.
So we've been Instagram buddies, and I finally talked to you because you wrote this awesome article called Why Aren't Black Firms Working on Memorials to Slavery? I've been wanting to talk about this for like forever. And then you just put it out there. And so I want to thank you for that.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for the thanks. Me too. It's so affirming, isn't it? That we had that same thought and concern, and not just us, that Craig Wilkins is another person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Craig's been doing this for decades.
Right. People tend to roll their eyes because it's been going on for years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they have plenty of stories. And I thought, well, why aren't mainstream design publications talking about it? Or if they have, why is it only in someone's editor's letter? Why has it just been left by the wayside? Because it continues. So
good questions. Hopefully we'll try to dive into some of these questions. But I want to first get to know you a little bit better. You are a journalist.
I am. I'm a pure play journalist. I don't have a degree in architecture. I went to school for English. I thought I would become a teacher like my mom. I minored in education. And then I got an internship one summer at a newspaper. It was black and white, printed, folded chronicles of daily life. And I liked it a lot. I liked speaking with people in the community. What else was great about that? Being able to tell a story, being able to enlighten people, especially when it benefited the community. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a newspaper, right? A local newspaper experience. That was a lot of fun. It was great. And I thought, okay, this might be something to do. And initially I got a job, not at a local newspaper full time, but at Dow Jones. I was coding stories for their wire service, which is just business news that the traders on the trading floor, like the stock exchange, use. So it was just straight, mergers and acquisitions and, somebody's an initial public offering, you had to recognize those stories and identify them. It was dry, but it was good money. And it let me move to New Jersey, which was a little closer to New York, because you're young and you think that's where everything is happening. So that was exciting.
Where are you from?
From Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Up the street from me.
Yeah. You grew up in DC?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I would occasionally go into DC, but not enough to get to know it. I think to be honest, as a teen, I felt like DC was for school trips and very expensive occasional weekend trips with a friend or a couple friends. And it was intimidating to me. All I knew was Georgetown. And I was like, I can't do this. Right. And the museum, the Smithsonian. That's all I knew, really. I think I would. Yeah. There's plenty of other places. I think I went to Anacostia Park once, but to be right down, like you say, right down the road and not know more about it was a shame.
Born and raised in Baltimore.
Yep. And went to school in Pittsburgh at a small women's college. And that was Rachel Carson's alma mater, the woman who wrote Silent Spring.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah. Chatham, it was called Chatham College. It's now Chatham University. And it's interesting because it's a collection of like donated mansions, I imagine. It used to be the Pennsylvania College for Women. It was, yeah. And now they do some joint educational programs with Carnegie Mellon. It's really just a sweet little school.
What made you go to an all-women's school?
I went to an all-women's high school.
Oh.
All-girls high school. And it didn't occur to me that I was limiting myself. I had a friend who was sort of a big sister at my school who went there. And all I thought of was, honestly, leaving the house and leaving the state. And I only saw 2 schools. And to be honest, like I said, like we were talking about before we started this, my mom was a teacher and I didn't really have an idea of what else I could do. So I didn't have a lot of vision about what I was going to do. Honestly, didn't have a whole lot of confidence. I knew that I could write, but I didn't know what I could do with it, if anything. So I looked at 2 schools, I visited 2 schools, and I picked one and I just went.
So you graduated and you started writing. How did you end up writing about design? Was that just I'm looking for a job and just happened to be?
Nope, not at all. That it's funny because when I was very small, and my grandmother, who was from Virginia, lots of folks have deep Southern roots. She was from a town called Ahoskie, Virginia. It's still got like 5,000 people at most. This is my father's mother, had this collection, encyclopedic collection of, and I can't remember whose brand it was, but they were all women's home decorating books, and they were hardcover. And I mean, it was everything from landscaping to bedrooms to children's rooms, living rooms. And it was, it was just a guide and ideas. And it was volume after volume after volume, even though she lived in a row house in Baltimore and never lived anywhere else that I knew of, that she had this collection. So I was there most of the time. I never had a babysitter. I was always there before I could go to school, or times when I was out of school. And that was my introduction, I think, to interior design. Just the idea that you design a space. And it was fun. I would make dioramas. There was no internet. I didn't have board games. Older people didn't feel the need to entertain you the way I do my children.
You found your own entertainment, right?
That's right. And I spent hours with those books. And so then later, my family, my mom would do a lot of flea marketing. And I liked the idea of the story behind objects. And that I guess it just lent itself to this enjoyment of design, what an object looks like and why it looks that way, and the history of why it has those angles and details. So I sort of was self-taught. And from that, I just always had that with me. So while I was at the paper, I interned. I had an internship during college, just before senior year, and noticed that it was here in New Jersey, where I am now. And they had this intense flea market culture down Route 29. There's a permanent flea market. There's real interest in furniture and period furniture. Mm-hmm. So I started collecting. So I had the internship, saw all this. And then once I got the job at Dow Jones, which really to me had nothing to do with journalism, but it was, in a way, I would moonlight at the newspaper. Mm-hmm. And I could still do those other stories. So my flea marketing was a habit. I started going to furniture auctions too. There was a while where I freelanced full time. I would still do stuff for the paper. So I covered what I considered to be like this mini economy created by this auctioneer who's down here. He's pretty big, and he's gone national. At the time, there were these regular auctions in Lambertville, and I would go to those, and I started buying arts and crafts furniture. I started studying the designers of the furniture and the books, and that led me to sort of earlier periods, things that came before, so I could recognize the furniture when I saw it. I wanted to know the history of the people who designed it. William Morris chairs, I wanted to know who that was, and why the chairs were valuable, why the wood looks the way it is. I happen to have a place to put all this stuff and, disposable income. And so I began to sell furniture just in my free time and not for any money to shop owners in Philadelphia, a couple of individual people here. And that was fun. That was a lot of fun. And the more I looked at that, the more I learned about post-war modern furniture and the fact that a lot of this stuff came from, there were designers who were also architects. Mm-hmm. And it just grew. My interest grew. My home library grew. And when I had the opportunity for a job at a trade that covered hotel design, I took it. And thankfully, the person I was working with, I said, well, it isn't my background, but he knew that I had this sort of business background. He said, well, I feel like if you can write about that, you can write about anything. And so I did. And I stayed there for 4 years. This was hospitality design, and I was executive editor there. And then I began to bounce around because I was in New York, and I thought that was the way. And I feel a lot of people did at the time. People thought that was the way you should grow your experience, right?
So you moved away from furniture to social justice.
It's a long way, right? It's a long road. To spaces, interior spaces. The more I got into that, well, the lonelier I got, honestly, because I was the only one. As a reporter, I didn't meet a lot of other Black journalists just covering design. And in New York, it seems to me that is a culture in and of itself. There were people, however, I have since met Nigel Maynard, who is amazing and very knowledgeable. And when we did meet maybe a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, he and I were both like, how is it we didn't know each other? How is that possible? He is based in DC, but he was going to some of the same events and doing some of the same things, covering maybe from a different point of view. He was more of his angle was more This Old House. Not that he was at This Old House, because I was there too. And so I went from hospitality design to Surface Magazine to, is that the right order? Yeah, to interior design to This Old House. I mean, it's a long road. And then to motherhood, and then back to Time Inc., which at This Old House had been owned by Time Inc. But when I went back to Time Inc., it was to handle custom publishing. So it was in their custom publishing division, which they called something else. It became the Foundry, and they do custom work for many different clients until I was able to get a job at Architectural Record. And I had a friendly relationship, networking relationship with 2 editors there while I was at Hospitality Design and Surface, and just stayed in touch. And that was good. It's an education. I feel like moving around to these places was mostly an education in what mainstream publications consider architecture. Of course, at Arc Record and these like higher end, trade publications. But at This Old House, it was also what mainstream consumer publications consider legitimate, marketable design, interior design, because that was something, being at This Old House and, having to look for, although they had a style editor at the time who did nothing but find projects to photograph, they had to make efforts to show houses that were owned by anyone other than a white family. And I remember when that effort began, and it began because Time Inc., we were in one of these moments that we're in now. I think we're in now, if it hasn't passed, where companies actually started to care about how they look. Or do we look diverse? I'm not saying that they actually commit to anything, but Time Inc. at that point thought it was in their best interest to look diverse. And they had a woman who was the director of diversity, and she conducted a diversity audit of the pages of all of the magazines there. And that was amazing. I mean, nothing snapped them into touch like that. And they began to show, or to try to show, more projects that featured, family of color. And then, of course, I was the only Black editor on the team. They were like, oh, we need to do some how-to things. So I began to do these how-to step-by-step projects. And of course, not was in the projects. They get a free model, right? So it looks like, yeah. But it was good experience. It was also, I think, being at these places and experiencing some of the same stuff when you're sitting around the editorial table and doing planning. It jaded me a bit.
I could see. I could definitely see, as a consumer of these publications, I've noticed Architectural Digest they've been hitting it out the park with some of their articles. I stopped paying attention to them decades ago because there's only so many celebrities I could handle, but some of the articles lately, I think has been about past, I don't know, even maybe 2-3 years, they've been really ramping it up.
Yeah.
And it's really encouraging to open up, or not open, to click on a feed that, that someone else may have a conversation, tying it back to the article that prompted me to talk to you. Feedback from architects and designers who are not Black or brown. How have you been handling those? Have you?
I have no idea.
That's great.
Is it? I don't know. Will it come? I don't know. I would like to write more articles about issues like that. My primary job right now is product coverage, which is also important. We do a lot on sustainability, but of course, close to my heart, are these issues because they're people's livelihood. It has been the same for so long, but you need to like I tell the kids, you got to finish the stuff you have to do so you can do the stuff you want to do. I think it's nice that places like Digest are doing something. I have to say, like I said, being at different places, being inside and listening to them have the planning meetings and talk about the editorial calendar at various places, it makes you think, like, it makes you a bit suspicious though, when publications will discuss certain issues and criticize certain industries, but not walk the talk when it comes to their own hiring, when it comes to their own leadership.
Isn't that the fear though? To be that diversity hire? And
yeah, I've been that. I feel like I've been that most of I don't know. I've had that fear. I won't say, because I've had some pretty good people, who've helped me out. I don't want to diminish their goodwill.
Well, you don't know. The thing is, you don't know you're the diversity hire. You believe that they hired you because you're the best person for the job. And then you walk into a room and you're like the only one there. And then you think about, well, am I the first one? Am I the last one?
Right. That I think that's interesting too, that you have to sneak around and find out if you're the first one. Mm-hmm. What's interesting, because I was at record, I was the only Black editor at that time, but Assad was there, the editor-in-chief of Elle Decor. Mm-hmm. He, before I got there. I mean, who knew? I did, yeah. Right. And then we became Instagram buddies similarly. Mm-hmm. And I go, what? But you have to learn, because there's so many gaps. And, when I first started, I'll tell you, it's funny. I got the job at the newspaper for the summer, but I don't know how I forgot. The reason that I got excited about getting a newspaper job and made the connection was because I went to the National Association of Black Journalists Conference. My god sister's aunt was a PR woman at that time. I think she was in LA. And she said, you guys need to go to this. And we went, and it was amazing. I met Ed Bradley, Well, this was when organizations, I'm going to date myself. This was the 80s. Organizations were spending money. They actually, like, how would you say, reserved, commandeered, they cut off the A train, and the NABJ attendees took the A train in black tie to an event at the Apollo, to the award ceremony. Ice sculpture in the subway on the platform. I'd never seen. Wow. I'm going to be a journalist. That's what I thought it was. I was blown away. I mean, of course, there were a lot of people who were broadcast journalists there, but they had these talks, even about other outlets for media. I think Mario and Melvin Van Peebles at that time did like a workshop or some sort of panel discussion, and you could go in, you could speak to them directly. It was very exciting. And that showed me, oh, you can take, because my mother said, what are you going to do with an English degree? You better minor in teaching. You better get your certificate. And I said, well, no, I can actually write. Black people write, we're out here, right? And that was exciting. But I was, a little silly at the time. And I didn't know if I could do anything or reach anybody with it. But once I got in New York and I felt like I'm in this space of mainstream media, Dow Jones, Time Inc., if you look at the publishers, right? I should be doing something. There were moments when I was writing another kitchen redo story and going, oh, what am I doing? Like, who is this helping? You say the same stuff over and over again about the backsplash and the furnishings. And, for several months, all those things should be stainless steel. All the tile should be white, and then it'll change. And then you say the same thing again. And so I got a little annoyed with myself. Going to interior design, I feel, was an opportunity to write something that was slightly more critical about the space. I think people look at them as like a pretty picture book, but they say something about the designer's intentions. And that was great. I felt like I was being paid to learn. That was cool. I had the opportunity at Record to invite whoever I wanted to help judge products.
Oh.
And to my surprise, architects do like to judge products. They like to see what's coming. Right? You smile like,
yeah. Yes, definitely. Put me on that list next time.
Right?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Different.
I'm not there anymore, but I think that they would love, that would be a benefit to them. Even in a space where you're not filling up the pages of the book, you are simply getting the expertise to create the jury for Records Products of the Year. They could always use a bit more diversity. So I made that, I was like, okay, this is a small thing, but I can do this. I can reach out to people. And I did. And I was happy. People said yes. Sheila Bridges said yes. What? That was amazing.
That was amazing.
It's great.
I love her.
Great. I mean, what are the odds? Getting more people, more points of view in. Mariam Kamara, who is, I think she has a studio in Rhode Island, but she's also a Niger-based architect and was David Adjaye's protege for, there's a Rolex program initiative. Anyway, she has her own firm, but that's the name. They called her his protege for, I guess it was 2018, 2019. She can correct me, but at any rate, she is a force. And I had the privilege of writing a story about her complex in Niger called the Hikma complex. It's a religious complex with 2 mosques on it. One converted to a library, because it has been standing there for many years, and the other a brand new functioning mosque. And that was exciting. And reaching out to her in the course of, reporting that, I said, would you, when you're in town, would you come and sit on this products jury? Yes, that was incredible. Had they ever asked an architect, one who is African, one who, she's educated in the US, right? But she maintains a firm there, does work there, ever asked them their opinion of all of these products that we give awards to? If you're going to take the time to do a jury, right? And you really want feedback on what is a good product because it works, because it makes environmental and economic sense, but you never ask anyone who works in this area of the world with the very, very specific climate conditions, right? I mean, her point of view blew my mind. And it silenced people at the table. Like, she was like, well, see these, whatever it was, I don't know, it could be windows, could be, she's like, I'm not ever going to use these. I don't even, what do I say about these? Because her buildings
have, you don't need them.
Right.
You don't need them.
Right. Meanwhile, more of it was like an HVAC system, but a split system, which I think a lot of people just overlooked in the US because they're always doing these big systems. She thought was great because it's adaptable, right, to more of the kinds of environments that she's creating, or, you know, within, and it more versatile. But, you know, that's what people are missing. And getting back to the diversity hire thing, I wish at the time to just blow apart this misconception from the company's point of view. Any company, we should diversify because it's a good thing to do. No, you should diversify because you are missing whole parts of your market. You are missing issues and opportunities that, one, could earn you money, and two, can grow your market. You are missing them. You have a blind spot, for lack of a better word. And that's why. And I've been told by people, oh, you know, even if you were not here, we would do these stories. And I think to myself, even if you did, it wouldn't have my perspective in it. So
absolutely,
it can't be me. You know, there's an arrogance. There is a real arrogance at many, you know, publications. I say that because that's what I know.
Speaking of that, let's go into this article that you wrote. We talked about this offline, about the RFP and RFQ process. What sparked me was the Tulsa, Oklahoma memorial, the massacre that happened 100 plus years ago. Whoever wrote the RFP wanted to be inclusive in creating this memorial. Was that the same sense that you got when you were doing your investigation on this?
And when I spoke to people at UVA?
Yeah.
That they wanted to make sure that everybody had a shot, you mean?
Yeah. It's in there. It was like, oh, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that.
Well, it's funny. I tried to be, we all have our own filters, right? And the way I read the conversation with Alice Raucher is that this is the way it's done. And we all know what discrimination looks like in a process like this. And this is the way it's done. Sort of an inflexibility, but also, and I don't know how much this matters, there's another layer or entity that creates this process or vets this process, the Virginia Commonwealth. This is where it gets muddy.
Yeah, because this isn't a private, this is a public institution. And similar with the Tulsa, Oklahoma, I forgot the area, but it's like we churn out RFQs all the time. So we're going to treat this like any other process.
Right. And really thinking very rigidly, if we don't, we'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
But just sort of missing the fact that, but wait a minute, this is a very specific goal that you have here. And in this case, it makes sense to not follow that routine step or to change it up a little bit. I'm not sure why. If you're going to make this an apology and it's specifically about exploited labor, and I mean, that's an understatement. Why wouldn't you seek to enfranchise the people who have inherited really that legacy, right? I mean, there's sort of Black architects, Black skilled craftspeople would be the ones you want to benefit, would be the ones you want involved. Of course, they said, yes, of course, we had hoped it would be, an African-American firm. I just feel that, and I get the sense that people like Craig Wilkins feel that if more of us are in that decision-making position, we wouldn't just want it. We'd find a way
to make it happen.
And I think that in other instances, this is going to get me in trouble. I'm a woman, I have issues, and I feel like sometimes there are a lot of blind spots in just accommodating women and especially mothers at work and giving them opportunities and stuff. However, there's been this bit of a movement in architecture. I feel like there's a lot of support for advancing women, and they will go to great lengths to make sure, well, we have your women are represented. I say they, I'm being a bit vague. So what I'm saying is when I see that effort, the extra effort unapologetically made to make sure that we have enough women, well, let's make sure we have enough racial diversity as well. I don't think that we should have to keep
reminding,
sidestepping. I mean, it's almost, I get nervous bringing it up, and sometimes you have to bring it up.
Okay, so let's painting a benefit of the doubt. You have this bureaucracy, right? So there's so many hands in it, no one can see the bigger picture. So our RFQ comes out, the architecture firm, these firms who are responding to these qualifications or proposals, should they be responsible for this?
So now that's interesting because
and I say this, listen, I say this because we take a huge stand with sustainability. You have the 2030 challenge, you have like, we're going to use sustainable products. It's a core.
And we put pressure on.
Yes.
Pressure on each other, pressure on other parts of the industry, designers putting pressure on manufacturers, right?
Yes.
Designers putting pressure on each other.
Yes.
But in this instance,
in the same energy, given the same energy, are we to blame?
You know, I don't know. If we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, this just baked in sense of entitlement. Because we should do this job, right? Because we should have this and we should have more of it. The scary thing is that it seems that it's possible that Black trauma could become a niche business for some non-Black firms. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's
I see it. This is just me. I see it also in this. No one has perked up about this rush to, I don't know. I don't know. I can't.
What's the hesitation? You keep on
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to, well, white firms building schools in Africa, or even non-African firms building schools in Africa, as if there aren't Africa-based firms. This is a bit weird to me. And yet we keep promoting the same big names because look what they're doing for Africa. Look what they're doing, as if there aren't, and perhaps there aren't as many, but I do know of some. And even if it's an architect of African descent who is based in the UK, but definitely continues to have roots there, they certainly exist. But maybe it's just Western-based firms getting these big ticket projects in Africa and promoting it like this is a great thing.
Yeah.
To me, and I'm sure there are levels there are things that complicate it. Clearly, the RFP writing parties in those situations, whether it's the local government, they're making a decision. They're going outside the country, right? They're hiring outside. Why don't they? Why not use at least a firm on the continent? It's very interesting to me, along with the idea that architecture itself, as we discuss it at least in US publications, definitely in Western publications, dismisses the traditions of the built environment in Africa and possibly in the Middle East. I mean, it's exoticized, or it's less than when it comes to being architecture.
This is my extreme example with Nicki Minaj and the whole COVID thing. I have Trinidadian roots. My husband's Trinidadian. Everybody in my life is Trinidadian, basically. And so this was a big deal. This is her defense, is that the media hasn't talked to her, hasn't spoken to her. The media is taken out of proportion. The media has, whatever it is, it's the media's fault, essentially, right? She has said other things, and they decided to focus on this comment that she made. She made a whole bunch of other things. She had said in her tweets other things, but the media has focused in on this. Could it be, playing devil's advocate here, what you just said, that the media is focusing on these white firms that are going to Africa, that there are African firms?
Absolutely.
That,
yes.
Okay.
That's what I should. You get a distorted view. Yes.
So how do you change that?
How do you change it? I mean,
and I think I go back to what I want to move on next, is that where are the Black firms? Because I know a handful of Black firms that are out there that gets no media whatsoever.
You mean in Africa, or are you talking about here?
I'm talking about US Black firms.
Oh yeah, okay. The big ones.
And not to say that there aren't any African architecture firms, not South African white firms with European things, not that, but Black people, Black Africans, right, that have these firms, but no one knows about them to showcase their work. Similar to here in the US, it's because
the media keep recycling the same names over and over and over again. Like,
exactly.
Do you have to hear about yet another? Until they die, the same people will get the same attention. That shouldn't keep happening. This is why this oohing and ahhing over the same stuff. I don't know, just no, not wanting to change, clinging to this image of like the great white male architect. These publications, these mainstream publications, only now are looking to include more people on a regular basis. Of course, they did special issues in the past. Of course, they did an article here and there. Yeah. But now, this is the flavor of the month. What ends up also being an issue is that the reason it doesn't continue or get normalized, which is what I would like to do now, is normalize coverage of Black architects with everyone else. But it doesn't happen if you don't have Black editors. It doesn't happen if you don't have Black directors in media companies. And that is difficult to do. I can't think of another instance, and I would love for somebody to correct me, of a Black editor-in-chief of a mainstream magazine that touches design, let alone architecture. I mean, there's your issue. That is your issue.
Essence magazine or Ebony used to do it a long time ago. They used to highlight Black architects, and to a point they still do, but I haven't touched an Ebony magazine in like forever. And
I'm ashamed to say I didn't realize that. I know that Essence at one point they were doing something, it was interior design, like little tips or tricks here and there. And for a while, and he was a friend of mine, it was not a Black woman. You know what I mean? It's Essence. Right. It was not a Black woman covering that. What you need is for a publication that reaches the clients to promote, or not promote necessarily, just cover what's happening with these people. This isn't self-promoting, but just my first thought is Metropolis is one place where I've been where we do it. We're able to do it. We could do it more. Maybe we will be, and it seems like that's happening. But
so what can Black firms do? Can they do anything?
They can reach out to me. I am so vested. There are times when I see an article elsewhere that somehow revealing or it's groundbreaking. And, good for them. They've made it through to Architect Magazine.
Yes.
And I think, I wish they had sent that to me. And it's just a lot to keep up with, but I get it.
So what is it that you're looking for? Because you guys have cycles. You have your trending and then you have your, you guys have cycles.
It depends on what the focus is for that month. We do have an edit calendar that the editor-in-chief has created. There's some flexibility. And honestly, there may be more flexibility because media is changing. The world is changing.
Mm-hmm.
More people are, what does it mean to tie content to seasons and even trade shows if those are not as regular as they have been in the past? So that is a very new consideration. It may not matter as much anymore, but I'm always looking for now. So this is the other thing. And this is a weird and somewhat unfortunate thing. Now that everything is about sustainability, looking for projects that have, of course, LEED certification, not just LEED, but very high LEED platinum. Of course, every time a firm gets a foothold, especially if you're emerging and you are still building your client base, it may be difficult to get those jobs where the client is willing to pay for the types of materials that will earn you the credits, that they're willing to take the amount of time it takes to get these credits. So that's the kind of systemic stuff I think that moves the goalpost just as soon as a bunch of firms possibly are ready and they have okay, now you have something that we can publish. Suddenly, there was a time when magazines would send out a photo crew. Well, now everybody wants you to have your own photos professionally done. So sometimes that can tie an editor's hands. Having professional photos of the space or the building, having a sustainability angle are always helpful. And doing a commercial project. So some sort of office or school or whatever. I love residences. We do handle residences online, and like I said, because magazines are beholden to advertisers, I think it has been difficult at every magazine. Well, no, because we have not been known for doing residences, I guess. They have not been the most popular pages with advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
But online, we certainly do them. And more of our real cutting edge reporting, I think, is going to be online. So
that's what it seems like.
Does that sound, it's not a tall list. It just, I know it can be a very challenging list.
It is extremely challenging.
Talk to me about that, because you can tell me about
that. With the Black architecture firms that I know, right? And these are Black men and women who own their own small firms. They don't have the time. They don't have the money, because it's not just you have to get into that space. You have to hire somebody most of the time there really is no closeout at the end of the project. It's like, project's done. There's no more money. I need to move on to the next one.
It was a point where I kept trying, well, how can I get this in? Even Moody Nolan. I feel like they're big enough that they're okay. They're not going to miss any meals if they don't get coverage. But of course, they're like the major game going with their growth and their offices that could compete with an HOK or a Perkins and Will for a job.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so much, Kelly, for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
All right, thanks. Hey, listeners. I have an exciting announcement. I decided to launch a membership program for the show, where you have a chance to support me and the show directly. I love creating the show, and it means the world to me that you all tune in to keep hearing me week after week. But it takes an immense amount of time and energy to produce. I want to keep the show going, and I want to invest in its growth. And I also want you to become a partner with me in this journey. That's why I'm excited to give you a chance to officially become a supporter of the show at glow.fm/archispolly, ARCHISPOLLY, or by clicking the link in the show notes. It's quick and easy. It takes less than 30 seconds and just takes clicking a link in the show notes and using Apple or Google Pay. You don't have to create any new logins, and you can contribute as much or as little as you like. If this show is part of your day or week and you like what I'm doing, then visit glow.fm/archispolly, all one word, and support me and the show in any way you can today.